Chapter 2 The Empty House. City of the Iron Tower, France, January 9th. The new year greeted the world with exceptionally cold weather. On the morning of Sunday, January 9th, the train arrived at the station an hour late. The rails were just two pronounced dark strips. It had snowed all night, and the snow continued to fall even now. When the train's doors opened with a gasp, Jeremy helped Aelita unload their suitcases. "Welcome back, guys," a voice greeted them from the platform. "I've been waiting a while for you." The voice belonged to Ulrich Stern, a tall and wiry boy wrapped up in a red quilted jacket. He had donned a woolen cap to protect himself from the wind, but from under its brim a dark and rebelliously pointed forelock fell onto his forehead. Aelita and Jeremy were delighted to see him again. "Hey, Ulrich, did the holidays go well for you?" Their friend shook his head, and Jeremy knew better than to press any further. Ulrich was going through an ugly period where he rarely agreed with his parents on anything. Ulrich raised the two suitcases without effort and turned to the girl. "Aelita, how are you? How was life at Casa Belpois?" Aelita smiled. Jeremy's parents have been wonderful, and his mother is a fantastic cook." "Magnificent," Ulrich murmured. Then he looked at them in silence, unsure of how to ask the question that had weighed most on his mind while he waited at the station. In the end, he chose his favorite approach, to confront the problem directly. "So now, is your memory becoming any clearer?" Aelita pressed the coat tighter to herself. Her breath misted out of her mouth in tight, light clouds. "We think it is. I remember who you are, and that's something." Ulrich smiled. They started through the streets of the city, slipping on the gravel surfaces. The snow gave everything an unusual, almost unreal aspect, the pavement becoming confused with the asphalt and the grass of gardens, like a single soft white carpet. "Cold, isn't it? I'm afraid we're all going to freeze in that empty house," Jeremy grumbled, shuddering. "Don't worry," Ulrich reassured. "Yumi slipped away ahead of us to light the boiler. It'll be like a fairy tale." "Is Odd already back in the city?" Jeremy inquired, blowing on his frozen hands. "He got back this morning. He's helping Yumi prepare the house." "Fantastic!" "Yeah," agreed Ulrich. "Our diabolical plan, as Odd keeps calling it, is working perfectly." The plan to return to the city one day before classes resumed, unbeknownst to their parents, had been Jeremy's idea. The goal was to spend one single Sunday together, with no one else interfering in their affairs. He and Odd were allegedly staying at Ulrich's house, while Ulrich was supposedly at Jeremy's and Yumi at Aelita's. To avoid the risk of being exposed, Jeremy had used a reliable old computer application of his own creation to mimic the voice of each parent and had called the individual families to confirm the various excuses. It was indeed a diabolical plan, and now, thanks to it, they had the time and peace necessary to tackle a certain issue. Someone had cleaned the snow from the wooden plate affixed to the gate, and now the inscription, "Hermitage," was quite legible. Beyond the fence, the garden had the same lunar aspect as the rest of the city. A double row of footprints had plowed the snow up to the steps of the porch leading to the front door. The Hermitage was a high and narrow stand-alone villa, 3 stories tall above the basement, with a drooping roof and a low garage that leaned against the house as if to support it. Surrounding them were snow-covered fir trees that grew thicker towards the rear of the building, where only a single line of low fencing separated the garden from the grounds of Kedik Academy. Aelita observed the darkened windows, the white colonnade that supported the porch, and the trees. "Do you remember this house?" Jeremy asked. "Vaguely, but it's more like a sensation. Like this was a place to which I felt a great attachment." Jeremy nodded. "I would say that was a positive start. It's promising, but we'd better get indoors before even our thoughts freeze." Inside, Odd was attaching a colorful festoon to the ceiling. As soon as he heard them open the door, he vaulted down the staircase with cat-like agility. He gave a vigorous slap on the shoulder to Ulrich and ran to embrace Aelita in a hug, while Jeremy threw a jealous look at him. "Hi, guys," greeted Yumi, hurling herself out of the kitchen, smiling in her usual thin, enigmatic way, but her almond eyes shining. Yumi Ishiyama was the last one in their group of friends, the eldest of them, and, at least in theory, the most responsible. Tall and lean, she loved to dress in black, the same color as her gleaming raven hair. Her parents were Japanese natives who had moved to France when she was a newborn. "How were your holidays?" Jeremy asked her. "Not bad. I managed to go skiing. And yours?" The conversation was suddenly interrupted by the din of things being thrown into the air. An instant later, Kiwi, Odd's scrappy little dog, appeared and began to happily run about between them, his stumpy tail waggling furiously. Between welcome-back hugs and slaps, the friends shared stories of their vacations like sweets. Then the moment had passed and they decided they should put themselves to work. Ulrich climbed onto the staircase to continue arranging the festoons, while Odd and Jeremy, the cooks of the group, moved into the kitchen. Yumi's mother had prepared a large tray of pasta to go in the oven, and the other expenses had been covered by the girl herself, buying popcorn, drinks, a pre-cooked roast, and 1 sack of potatoes. "Try to avoid cutting yourself on the finger," Jeremy recommended, while Odd squatted down in the chair, the potato peeler in his hand. His friend ignored the jab. "So, tell me, how's Aelita?" he asked suddenly, as if it was the thing that mattered the most to him. "Well," Jeremy said, tightening his shoulders, "her memory has almost completely returned now. She remembers us and several events from the past few years." He pondered for a moment, before adding, "except Lyoko." "What do you mean, except Lyoko?" Jeremy sighed. "What I mean is that every memory she has regarding Lyoko has been completely eradicated from her mind." "And her memories of Xana?" "Xana, too." Odd finished peeling 1 potato and took hold of another. "I meant to ask if you thought this amnesia was Xana's fault." "Impossible," Jeremy sighed, his heart heavy. "Xana is dead." "Whoa, I'm stuffed," Ulrich exclaimed, allowing himself to lean back in his chair. "And guess who has to do the dishes?" winked Odd. Hey, don't talk to me about that. That's a woman's work." Yumi thrust out to jab her elbow in his stomach. "Me and Aelita were thinking of helping you," she said with a malicious smile. "But since, as you say, it's a woman's work, we'll leave that honor to you." Ulrich grumbled, while the others sniggered with relish. Suddenly, Jeremy rose from the table, disappeared for an instant into an adjacent room, and returned carrying a satchel. "The plates can wait, guys. What do you say to going on a walking tour?" he proposed enthusiastically. Odd was not much for the idea. "Have you seen the weather, Einstein?" he protested, indicating out the window. "It's at least 1,000 degrees below zero, and I bet it's going to start snowing again soon." "It doesn't snow at 1,000 degrees below zero," Einstein said patiently, while Odd snorted and rolled his eyes at the ceiling. "And in any case, we don't have to go particularly far, just up to Cadix grounds." Yumi regarded Jeremy with a serious expression on her face. "What do you have in mind?" she asked. Jeremy had opened the bag he recovered and extracted a little digital camcorder from it. "I wanted to do a video diary," he explained. "I thought it could be fun to tell this camcorder everything that's happened to us, and for all we know, it might one day prove useful to us." "A perfect idea," Yumi nodded, convinced. "Actually, I'm with Odd," commented Ulrich. "I don't understand why we should put in so much effort." Yumi elbowed him in the stomach a second time, this time with more precision and force. "Ah!" "So, shall we give this a chance?" Jeremy exhorted, this time not meeting with any objections. They slipped on their coats and scarves and ventured outdoors. The sky was a clear gray that was deepening to violet. Snow weather. Jeremy led the way around the back of the house, Odd and Aelita alternating behind him. Ulrich brought up the rear and drew closer to Yumi. "You could have been a bit gentler with those elbows," he murmured resentfully. "Aren't you supposed to be the big martial arts champion?" she pressed back. "And don't tell me you don't understand why Jeremy has proposed this." To tell you the truth, no. It's obviously for Aelita, right? If we talk about Lyoko from the beginning to the end, she'll possibly recover her memory." Ulrich dragged his cap lower down his forehead, a little unconvinced. They went out of the Hermitage's back gate and struck out across the school's grounds. Here the snow lay so high that it nearly reached their knees, and everything was immersed in a soft silence. Kiwi proceeded by hops and bounds, disappearing at intervals into the white expanse. They walked until they could just glimpse the dark shapes of Cadix palatial buildings, the sloping roofs appearing black against the pale background of the winter sky. Eventually, the group stopped in a small glade, completely alone. Jeremy and Odd started digging in the snow with their hands. "You'll see," Ulrich whispered to Yumi. "I won't be able to resist 5 seconds. 4, 3... He got as far as 1, at which point Odd scooped some fresh snow into his hands, compacted it into a big ball, and flung it at them with all his strength. Ulrich ducked and the ball struck Yumi square in the face. "Ha ha!" Ulrich laughed, slapping her on the shoulder. "What did I tell you?" You're going to pay for that, Odd," Yumi cried, her hands already sinking into the snow, and in the instant, battle broke out. Enough! I surrender!" Aelita panted several minutes later. She allowed herself to fall on the ground beside Jeremy, who had raised his own white flag shortly into the fight. The rush for snowballs had cleared a beautiful glade of snow, and set in the green tufts of grass was the rusted iron disc of a big manhole cover. Although there was nothing strange about the manhole itself, it was about the commonest of circular metal plates. It was unusual in that it was not in the center of a road, but instead in the middle of a beautiful private park, amidst the grass and the trees. "Ulrich!" Jeremy called, preparing the camcorder. "Could you begin to tell us from the beginning? Ulrich, you can start. Hello?" "Well, in truth, you must have been the first to go down the manhole, not me." Come Come on, Ulrich, it's not difficult, insisted Yumin. If you begin, I'll help you with the dishes later. Done deal? Well, if that's the case, he gave in, clearing his throat. Even if they had none of their own, they all understood Jeremy's motives for choosing to start the manhole. It was down there that everything had begun. To Ulrich, Jeremy was little more than the class swot. Since they'd both entered Academy, they'd only ever shared a few hastily grumbled hellos. It was not until much, much later that Ulrich had actually noticed Jeremy. Seen from the air, Caddick Academy resembled a gigantic fork. From the main gate one entered the vast grounds, bisected by two tree-lined avenues that led up to the entrance into the administrative building. Behind that, the structures formed a series of horseshoes, so that they created three large courtyards, one surrounded by classrooms, the central one, which held the two low buildings that served as the school's refectories, and finally the largest courtyard, which extended into the sports ground. That day, Ulrich was standing next to one of the drinks machines scattered around the campus. With him was Odd, his new roommate, who was speaking non-stop and gesturing wildly, while he quietly sipped a drink from a can. At a certain point, Jeremy had approached the machine, had inserted a coin, and pressed a key. What followed was an electric shock so great as to make him drop to the ground like a sack of potatoes. After a moment's hesitation, Ulrich had run to assist and accompanied Jeremy into the infirmary. Fortunately, nothing serious had happened to the swot. Ulrich had greeted him and then left in a pensive state of mind. Some days later, Ulrich had heard cries coming from Jeremy's room. He burst in running to find his classmate attempting to fight off some kind of tin box on tiny wheels. Evidently one of his science projects had gone haywire. "Give me a hand! Shut it off!" Ulrich had pulled the robot's plug from the wall socket, returning everything to normal. "Thanks." "Figures. Guess I've developed a taste for saving your skin." Jeremy Bellepoix had regarded him seriously from behind the tarnished lenses of his glasses and, after a moment of silence, had declared, "There's more to it than you know." "What do you mean?" I can't explain it to you, not here." "So where can you?" "Outside, in the grounds, but not right now. Wait until tomorrow." Ulrich had stared incredulously for several seconds, but in the end he had nodded his assent. The sun was sparkling between the leaves, projecting a green and fresh light over everything. The shadows cast by the trees provided a bit of relief on that hot spring day. Ulrich had watched perplexedly as his new friend had jumped like a rabbit from one bush to another. "Are you sure this is the right place?" Jeremy glanced archly at him in retort. "No one's obliging you to be here." "I'm here because of you. I don't trust myself to leave you alone, given your amazing talent for attracting trouble." The truth was, however, that the comical boy in the glasses, who had until recently had always played the role of a mysterious hermit, had now tickled his curiosity. "Here, here!" Jeremy finally exclaimed. "Found it!" The manhole that rose from the grass definitely left a strange impression. It was decidedly out of place, like a chicken using a city crosswalk, or a man wearing a swimsuit to a formal dinner. "Give me a hand," Jeremy said. Together, the two boys managed to lift the heavy iron plate. A series of rusted handles led down into a vertical shaft, disappearing in the dark. The smell that wafted up from the bottom was definitely unpleasant. "And we have to go down there?" "I'm not forcing you to hear my story," Jeremy said curtly, already lowering himself into the hole. Ulrich hesitated for a moment until he gathered himself together and followed purposely, climbing down into the shaft like a blind man. Further and further down. Suddenly his foot did not land on another rung but only empty air. His legs swung out and, unwilling to release his grip on the rungs, he was left immobile, hanging in the shaft like a length of salami. Then he heard Jeremy's voice resounding up from beneath him. "What are you doing up there? That's the end of the ladder. You've got to jump." "Excuse me, did you say jump?" "Come on, it's no more than 1.5 meters. Caught in the concrete pipe, Ulrich began to ask himself what he had done to deserve this. Jeremy had seemed to be a quiet boy, but evidently something was not right in his head. Like all the great geniuses, some of his cogs must be out of place. "Ulrich, get moving!" Ulrich let go. He tumbled down and quickly rose to his feet, surprised to find himself still intact. He checked around and saw that they were in a wide and badly illuminated tunnel, so deep that he could not even glimpse the roof. He also noticed that his trousers were soaked. Something like a gray river was flowing in the bottom of the tunnel, and, oh, he had never smelt a stench like it! The stink that impregnated the air was nearly solid. I can't breathe," he gasped. "That's soiled water," Jeremy explained calmly. "We're in the sewers after all, my friend." "Oh, the ideal place for a perfect picnic." "Well then, brace yourself. The sooner we push on, the sooner we get out." Ulrich had to repeat that twice to himself. The two boys set off along a kind of pavement that skirted the edge of the Filthy Waters culvert. Their shadows grew long and tall on the curved walls, contorting themselves into monstrous figures, while around them the absolute silence was broken only by the sound of their footsteps and some frightened squeaks. "Rats?" ventured Ulrich. "Poor little boy, what part of 'we are in the sewers' don't you understand? Obviously they're rats, and if you really want to know, those black things floating down there are—" Okay, I understand," Ulrich interrupted him with a hasty gesture. After some time the tunnel was abruptly interrupted. A grating barred the passage across its full width, making further progress impossible. Here a new set of iron rungs was embedded in the wall, disappearing upwards. "That's how we return to the surface." Ulrich sighed. He was certain the smell of the sewers would be impregnated into his clothes forever. At the top of the climb, a second metal trapdoor awaited them. When they shifted it, the sunlight almost blinded them. Ulrich scrambled up and out, and his breath was taken away. They had come out onto the bridge leading to the old factory, a gigantic building that occupied the entirety of a solitary sun-beaten island. Around them, the waters of the river that ran a short distance from Caddick gurgled tranquilly. Behind Ulrich, a great gate surmounted by barbed wire blocked the road which at one time had allowed trucks to cross the city's industrial quarter to reach the factory. Now the asphalt was cracked and broken, and tufts of green grass were pushing up here and there through the carriageway, and the bridge did not seem to be in the best condition either. The metal spans were covered in rust and had a decidedly precarious look to them, but the panorama was definitely one of a kind. The bridge enjoyed a spectacular view over the river, and in the distance, over the deserted sheds, could be seen the tops of trees and the majestic profile of the buildings at Caddick. "Beautiful, eh?" smiled Jeremy. "Yeah, dunno why there's nobody here anymore. I made some research into it and, well, come up with nothing. The factory failed when we were both little. Instead of selling it, for some reason the owners preferred to leave it here to molder. Then the new industrial zone was built outside the city, and this quarter went to ruin." Jeremy paused and regarded the whole of the island. "Sooner or later someone will buy it and build us a car park, or office buildings, or perhaps a hotel even," he concluded. The factory, with its extinguished smokestacks, had a melancholy air. Ulrich thought it was certainly not a bad idea to take advantage of all its vacant space. You could replace it with arenas, skateboard tracks, business premises, or perhaps build an amusement park that would really turn heads. "Let's go," Jeremy said, setting out across the bridge. "Where?" "It seems obvious enough to me. Into the factory."